You're listening to Arcane Carolinas, an exploration of the Carolinas' folklore, legends, myths, and modern weird. Each episode, we examine the historical context of our topic and aim to preserve some of the stories that help make this part of the world such a fascinating place.
This is Tin Smith Southern Reserve Bourbon, and it was distilled about 10 minutes from where I grew up.
Oh.
And I had never heard of it until today when I went to the Taj Mahal of ABC stores, which is one of my destinations in Charlotte.
Okay.
It's true.
We're going to talk about this later because I'm going to go there.
Yes.
I don't have any panels tomorrow.
I have no idea if this is good or terrible.
At worst, it's going to be alcohol.
Yeah, so cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
For my money, it could stand some ice, but otherwise it's fine.
Yeah, just to open it up a little bit.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been Arcane Carolinas Live. Thank you for coming.
This is a way to, in some ways, say I'm really sorry that I was not here last year, and I am really happy that we're both here this year.
I am super happy that we're here. This is our third one.
Yeah. Wow. God.
Woohoo!
Time. What is time?
The first one was late. It was like an 11 o'clock one or something.
That was a rough one.
And it was a lot of fun.
It was a good episode. It was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun.
Great crowd.
And then, hey, Spooky CLT, what's up? But it was a lot of fun because that was the same night that the Pentagon confirmed that the New York Times UFO footage was legit. And they were scrolling that on the lobby TV. And I just sat there, not yelling at people, but excitedly.
You were very enthusiastic.
You were very animated.
I was enthusiastic, and it was just this watershed moment of like, it's starting to crack. And then people were like, Charlie, calm down. This is not it. Disclosure is not tomorrow. I'm like, no, it's happening.
Disclosure is an ongoing process.
It is. But I feel like that's relevant.
It actually is super relevant.
Based on what you're bringing to the discussion tonight.
Yes. So this episode...
We should introduce ourselves for the tape.
Oh, we should.
And for the people that have never seen us before.
Okay, quick question. We did this at Carolina Fear Fest. It was really interesting. Who here has heard of Arcane Carolinas before? All right. That's awesome. Welcome very much. Welcome. Yes, y'all also are welcome.
Arcane Carolinas is a podcast about folklore, legends, just weird stories in the Carolinas. If it could possibly be on the X-Files and happened in North Carolina or South Carolina, those are the stories that we look at. And we do it from a historical context, so we're not just like, and here's the Wikipedia article that says that rock is haunted. We're like, why is that rock haunted? Is it actually haunted? Was this a middle school creative writing project that somebody put on a blog and then it got repeated?
Which is something that has happened.
So yeah, I'm your co-host, Charlie Mushaw, full of tacos and ready to sit back and listen.
All right. And I am your other co-host, multi-award-winning novelist and award-winning podcaster, as are you.
Yeah, we won an award.
Yeah.
Thank you for your help on that.
Yes, Michael G. Williams. So our normal style for the two of you who have never listened to Arcane Carolinas before is that one of us does all the research.
To ramble.
Yes. No, it's that one of us does all the research and one of us comes in totally blind. And for this episode, I have done all the research. And I promise this will not take 7 hours.
I don't believe you.
Okay.
I think you have enough to go that long.
I probably do.
Yeah.
But I constrained myself.
Other people are coming in later.
Eventually, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I've got a panel like 2 hours from now and stuff like that.
Remember that time the guy in the back hall was a different shaped hall. It was like narrow and very long. We're like, that guy in the back seems to be waving at us. You're over time. It's just like,
yes, I am over time. Thank you.
Tell you what,
I am over time.
You telling me about time.
I'm over time as a concept, but to make use of time as a
Speaking
concept.
Speaking of UFOs and their ability to warp time and space.
That's true.
Yeah. Tell me a UFO story, Michael.
Okay, I'm going to tell you one hell of a UFO story, frankly. So, to give you some sense of context, in 1974, a guy from North Carolina named Fawcett, whose name I might have just gotten wrong, and if so, I will correct it when I edit this, because that's the beauty of editing. He wrote an article describing how wild 1973 had been in UFO sightings. So here's some quick statistics about 1973.
So he was enthused about 1973.
He was enthused. He would have been the person who was at the bar hollering.
Okay.
Yeah. So there were sightings reported by police and aviation authorities in all 50 states in 1973.
Really?
Yes. MUFON, or what is now MUFON, cataloged reports of UFO landings in 21 states. In 16 states, sightings of UFOs included being able to see UFO occupants either through the windows of their craft or landing, getting out, walking around, and collecting samples.
Like how many?
Bagging them up. 16.
That's a not insignificant amount.
Photographs of this were taken in 10 states. In several cases, yes, all in the South, people who saw UFOs tried to shoot at them.
Yep.
To the point that his big, long catalog includes a special marker, like L for landing, O for occupant, et cetera, et cetera. Different little symbols mean different things, and he dedicated a symbol to shoot out.
Aggressive engagement.
Yes. Interestingly, because these sightings predate what we often refer to as the X-Files effect, then they describe a variety of creatures. They're not all just grays, but some of them are grays in like swimsuits, basically.
What are grays, Michael?
Like scuba suits. Featureless, 4 foot tall people with
the big eyeballs.
Big eyes. If you've ever watched the X-Files, they're in the
If you had a
credits.
skateboard in the 90s, it probably by Alien Workshop, it had one on there.
But one fairly common set of overlapping descriptors for them was either grays in gold jumpsuits or creatures with wrinkled skin, long hair, and pointed ears.
That's my uncle.
Yeah, well, there you go. I mean, there's a reason why I gave myself a haircut this morning. So, most interestingly to me, though, all of these kinds of sightings, reports by police officers or other authorities with plenty to lose, they are sightings of UFOs landing, occupants walking around like half the time. They're seeing a lot more than a light in the sky. And all of this came from a 1974 MUFON newsletter article written by George Fawcett. He cataloged just in North and South Carolina that year UFO landings in Ellenboro and Garner, North Carolina, sightings of UFO occupants, including shooting at them in Tabor City, North Carolina.
Wait, like Garner, like just
like
south
Garner
of
outside of
like
Garner,
Garner,
yeah.
Where the weather satellites are wonky.
A UFO registered on police radar in Burlington.
What?
Yeah. Okay. Photographs of UFOs from Ellenboro, Louisville, and Concord, North Carolina. Concord right up the road. Yeah. Radar tracking of UFO in Paris Mountain, South Carolina. And photos and home movies of UFOs taken in Greenville, South Carolina on multiple occasions.
This is awesome. How come?
Before you get yelled at, it's Concord.
Concord, okay.
There we go. Thank you. We will get.
That's cool.
We get hateful emails. Absolutely hateful.
I feed on that hate. So there were other reports too, such as in Kevin Randall's UFO book, the UFO Casebook, which was published in '89. It includes a report from Sydney, North Carolina, of a family seeing a UFO occupant emerge from a craft. It had wrinkled gray skin, red eyes, long hair, pointed ears, a severe limp, and it could leap 50 feet in the air.
Dude, this is like overlapping so many descriptions of creatures that we've talked about in other episodes.
Yeah, totally. In fact, that sighting, as bananas as it is, was reported also by a totally unrelated person who was a local radio DJ leading a bunch of Cub Scouts.
What was the name of the town?
Sydney.
All right, Sydney, welcome to News on the Nines. We've got UFO. How did he report it? Just say that.
Now, to be clear, even MUFON points out that the government, by that point, had multiple experimental aircraft projects going.
Sure. I mean, you remember what a big deal it was when they revealed the stealth bomber.
Yeah, right.
Like, it was like, oh, that explains so many triangles.
And everybody knows that was being tested way before it was ever acknowledged.
Right.
But the government projects to develop those craft were largely in response to UFO sightings.
Right. Also, the Air Force standard flight suit isn't wrinkly gold foil.
Yeah. But in 1973, 2 astronauts reported having seen UFOs in orbit and said they believed that they were controlled by alien intelligences.
Okay.
A senator, Barry Goldwater, said that he thought UFOs were real. There were reports by military and commercial pilots so often in 1973 that the FAA and DOD both issued new guidelines for what to do if you were a pilot, civilian or military, and saw a UFO. Mm-hmm. And there were so many people reporting that they received injuries like burns and radiation poisoning after close encounters that MUFON started telling people, if you see a UFO, stay away from it.
Oh, it's like the, what is it, Rendlesham Forest incident?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In 1973, a Gallup poll estimated that 15 million Americans were willing to tell them that they had seen a UFO.
I seen it.
That was nearly the name of this episode. So 1973 was kind of a lot. But this story does not take place in 1973. It takes place in 1975.
What year did Close Encounters of the Third Kind come out?
Later in the 70s.
Yeah, it was like closer to that. It was like late 70s.
Yeah,
right?
and in fact, we're going to talk about that again at the end of this.
I think it was part of the slow roll disclosure movement and that it was funded by the government.
Might have been. I don't know.
Where's my tinfoil hat?
It's wrapped around that burrito. I don't know. This story comes from Robeson County, which we've talked about before. I do like it. Yeah, actually.
Really? It comes from Robeson? Oh my God, that's where the one on Sunday comes from.
No way.
Yeah.
So that's one of the fun things. We never talk about this stuff in advance. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And when we do Robin Hood of the Swamp and all kinds of fun stuff that's coming up, we're going to be talking about Robeson County.
All right, go Lumberton.
Yeah. Right? Lumberton's about to get a lot of Arcane Carolinas love. I just kind of wanted to set the stage for the context around UFOs at the time.
UFOs.
That a lot of people were seeing UFOs.
1973, 1974.
But also it feels appropriate to note that 50 years ago, that's how common this stuff was.
Right.
And it was all before the X-Files. Sure. That's a point I keep coming back to just because the X-Files really, I love it. And it flooded the marketplace of reports.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, in the early morning hours of April 3rd, 1975, so 2 years later, what is believed to have been a single UFO was spotted, tracked, and even followed by different law enforcement jurisdictions and officers across 5 counties in southeastern North Carolina.
Those like bubble choppers from the 70s?
Yes.
Yeah, I just picture like...
That would be amazing. But no, this is more like 60s cop car look,
Like Beastie Boys Sabotage video.
Yes.
Like
yeah, exactly.
Single light on top.
Yeah.
All right. Running, sliding across the hood to get in so that they can chase the UFO.
I would watch that movie. I feel like that is one of the X-Files movies. Anyway, this all comes from immediately reported stories in the local newspaper, which is called the Robesonian.
Yep. I know it well because I'm going to talk about it Sunday.
There we go. So at 1:45 a.m. on April 3rd, 3 Lumberton police officers saw a V-shaped craft flying 200 to 300 feet above the ground near them while they were out on patrol. Specifically, it was flying north along I-95.
Well, that's easy enough to follow.
Right? They described it as being V-shaped, and it had a row of red lights on one side, a row of green lights on the other, and 2 searchlights or spotlights. The craft, as they followed it up I-95, moved away from I-95 and started flying over US 301, which is still a highway, towards Lumberton High School. That was how they described it. It's headed for the high school.
Senior prank!
When it became clear that that craft would be leaving the air over Lumberton and thus the end of their jurisdiction, they contacted their own police department. They'd been reporting what they were following the whole time. The Lumberton Police Department called other local law enforcement agencies
like a relay
and said,
race.
Be aware that there is something up there and it might be headed for you. And one of the departments that they talked to was from the next town up 301, which is called St. Paul's, North Carolina.
Okay.
Now, St. Paul's is a tiny town. Okay, it has 2,000 people in it today, and it had 2,000 people in it then, and I suspect it might be 2,000 of the same people. I don't know.
The mailboxes all have the same name painted on for the last 100 years.
You actually don't need street numbers there.
Right.
There were 2 officers on overnight patrol, even in that tiny little town. And those 2 officers started looking for the craft to fly towards town along 301. And a couple of miles south of St. Paul's, they saw the craft, but it was not approaching them in the air. They were driving down 301.
Wait, what?
And they saw it lift off from a wooded area on the side of the highway.
All right. Help me with the visual here.
So you're driving along, and they see it up into the air and take off.
Cool.
They tried to follow it to determine where it was headed next, but it immediately accelerated to something they estimated to be 200 miles per hour.
I have no idea how they would measure that.
I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because these are backcountry cops. They have seen some people hot rod.
Okay. Yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah. Yep. I had a guy tell me once, there's a little dirt road, and the rule driving down his road was that you couldn't go more than 15 miles an hour.
Sure.
And he tells me, now, I've been a truck driver for 50 years or whatever. It's like, and I can tell you to the number how fast you're going. So don't try to lie to me and say you're going a mile an hour over 15. I'm looking at him like, what? Anyway, I just got big flashes of Woody telling me that story.
Maybe Woody was a cop in St. Paul's. I don't know.
Maybe he was.
Maybe.
He was a truck driver, so no, but he could tell you, I can look at any car and tell you how fast it's going. That was his big thing.
Okay.
And I was just like, oh, yeah, neat. Like, what do you say to that? Cool.
How much does that pay?
Right. I'll go slow down your driveway. I got you. 15 miles an hour. Won't hit a deer. Promise.
Yeah. Shortly after those St. Paul's police officers see it flying away at what they estimated at 200 miles per hour, sheriff's deputies in Hoke County, which is just to the northwest of St. Paul's, if you look at it on a map, reported seeing a V-shaped lighted craft flying overhead. Hoke County is the location of Rayford, North Carolina, if that helps you place it. And if it does not, then congratulations, you can now answer one more trivia question. Those Hoke County deputies, though, also tried to follow. When I was doing my notes, I started to write pursue, and then I was like, I don't really know if pursue counts. But anyway.
We're going code, boys!
Right.
What a fun night for these guys,
right?
By the way.
Yeah, like, hello. Yeah. And would it turn northeast away from Hoke County and flew into Cumberland County, the end of their jurisdiction. Cumberland County is just north of St. Paul's, and it is where, of course, one finds the city of Fayetteville.
Yep.
And associated with it, the newly renamed Fort Liberty.
Yeah.
And
as of today. Right? Yeah.
It's now Fort Liberty. And
no more brag, Dad.
I feel like we have different definitions of that term.
We still have faith.
Yeah. So
But that also at the time was the location of what was then Pope Air Force Base. And so there were a lot of governmental authorities in Cumberland County. None of them reported seeing anything or following anything whatsoever. Total silence.
And so I work in Fayetteville. Yes. We see nothing. Quick aside.
Yeah, go for it.
That is relevant to this. It's really cool coming in and going to work along my commute. I get to see all kinds of cool helicopters and planes flying around and doing maneuvers. I'm just like, I'm going to go work on computers.
The one time
I don't work for the government. I'm not any top secret stuff. I'm an IT guy. To clarify, I'm not involved with it at all. But I get to see them flying around, helicopters doing cool stuff. And it's a really neat place. And I guarantee you, if you were like, hey, what did I see? They'd be like, no.
So, total radio silence from anybody in Cumberland County about having seen anything. None of the authorities in Cumberland County would tell the Robesonians that they had seen jack. Nothing. But if you continue on a northeastern line through Cumberland County, you get to Sampson County, home of the town of Clinton, where I believe a year ago we talked about a specific meat shower.
Last year, even.
Yes.
At this very event.
At this very event. A police officer for the town of Roseboro reported that he was standing beside his patrol car when a V-shaped craft with lights on both sides and spotlights flew over him at an altitude of approximately 100 feet. So this thing is not exactly being subtle.
No.
I mean, if you want to know what 100 feet is, you walk outside of this hotel and you count up to about the 8th floor. That's how close this
This
thing
is
was.
what happens when you recruit 18-year-olds. Yeah!
Let's go buzz Robeson County. But let's take a second and imagine that it is a cool April morning.
Yeah.
And you're standing outside your car having a little smoke break, probably because it's the 70s.
Yeah.
And you're just standing there minding your business, and you happen to glance up, and a perfectly silent V-shaped UFO just happens to be gliding just right overhead at you.
Lucky strike. So smooth. Almost as smooth as the flying V that just went over my head. So this started overnight, and we're into the morning now, right?
Well, it's still the same morning hours.
Okay.
The Roseboro police officer who saw the craft, he jumped in his patrol car and started following it southeast but at the town limits of Garland, which was several miles away. So he like way out of his way to keep following this thing. He gave up and turned back. If you imagine a clock face, like at this point, it's shown up first at about 7 o'clock on the clock face, and it has now flown on the map around to 3 o'clock. That's a circle that it is drawn. And the Robesonian notes that there were 45 minutes where nobody reported seeing anything.
Conspicuously.
Conspicuously. Which actually isn't all that long.
And we've already established that it sat down at some point.
Oh, yeah. Sat down at some point and then got seen lifting off.
Bathroom break.
In fact, maybe made a show of lifting off. Bathroom break. Oh, my God.
There's a rest stop on the next exit.
What if that's what they're doing when they're collecting samples? They're like, we got to stop at the snack machine.
Right. Get that little coffee cup with the cards on the side. Oh, what'd you get?
Southwest of Garland, a police officer in the Bladen County, home of the vampire beast, town of Elizabethtown, which for all I know is pronounced sneeze. Reporting. I'm not making fun of you. I'm making fun of us. Okay, I just want to be clear. It just occurred to me this could sound like I'm being a real jerk, and that is not my intention.
We notoriously mispronounce things.
Oh my God, all the time.
I went to college in the mountains near Cashiers.
Yeah,
Cashiers.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I
They
grew
have
up.
a lot of UFO activity.
Yeah, I grew up in the mountains, and I still don't know whether to call it Leicester or Leicester because English comedy has confused me. So,
I think for around here it's Leicester.
yeah, I think so. They reported seeing it fly over Elizabethtown. People all over Elizabethtown reported seeing it, and in fact, the police in Elizabethtown got continuous reports that there was something flying overhead, bathing the town in light from its spotlights.
If this wasn't an experimental aircraft with young pilots having fun, then it was young aliens having fun.
Yeah, for real. Like, for real, for real.
Hit them with the lights!
After it flew out of Elizabethtown, it made one final stop for the morning over Columbus County, which means it had more or less completed its sort of lopsided semicircle.
Sure.
At 6:55 a.m., so a little over 5 hours after it was first seen, almost constant sightings for 5 hours. And a law enforcement officer in Columbus County reported seeing it fly past 5 minutes before the sun went up. And then the sun came up and nobody saw anything.
I thought you were going to say, and then he decided to shoot at it.
No, he did not. He did not. Now, like I said, it is worth noting that Fayetteville Airport said they never saw anything on radar. And a UFO group called Tar Heel UFO Study Group at the time, which sounds like the kids in the library I want to hang out with. They said that this was their first report they had received from Eastern North Carolina. But they were based out of Winston-Salem, and they said at the time, but we're getting like 3 reports a week up here. So who knows? But news of this sighting traveled so fast that the newspaper article came out that day and included a note that a group called the National UFO Study Center, which I kind of suspect is the newspaper getting the name of Newfork wrong.
Yeah.
The National UFO Research Center. They had already called the Lumberton Police Department and said, can we send people to work with you?
And Lumberton was like, yeah, whatever.
Word of this got around.
Yeah, no, it's
Like in a
awesome.
major way. So what happened after that? Did anything come of it? 3 days later, on April 6th, the Robesonian ran another article, again on the front page. The first article was front page, top of the paper. It is the story that day. And again, this was on the front page saying that other local law enforcement officers, none of them the ones mentioned in the first article, had personally rejected the FAA's explanation of what everybody had seen. Because the day after the sightings, Friday, April 4th, an FAA spokesman told people that what they were seeing was a Boeing 737, which was a pretty new model of airplane, but not that new at the time. And that it was being operated by Piedmont Airlines, which was a regional airline.
I remember Piedmont. I have
And that they were-
deck of playing cards from Piedmont.
Technically, Piedmont is still around, but they're a regional subsidiary of American.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
I used to deal with, up till February, I used to deal with them for 7 years.
All right. So according to the FAA, this was Piedmont Airlines, quote, making test runs with a Boeing 737.
Sure. Okay.
And
At
performing
100 feet.
Right, performing banking maneuvers to do low altitude flying. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say that sure, a lot of this is out in the country, but a lot of this is over towns. And I don't think you test fly your brand new 737 100 feet over town just for the heck of it.
Also, Cumberland County would have acknowledged that. There's so much air traffic. Like, I can't stress how much air traffic there is in that area. It's constant.
Well, I don't
So-
think 737s can do a vertical.
Yeah, right. So,
Or make that cool Jetsons noise. Like,
a Robeson County Sheriff's Department dispatcher immediately called the Robesonian and said, well, that's just garbage.
your answer is bad and you should feel bad.
And he was like, I was driving home at night and I saw what looked like a plane approaching. And it was weird that it was approaching where I was driving because there aren't a lot of flight paths over there. And then I noticed that it had stopped in midair and was hovering about 100 yards from my car. So I stopped my car and flashed my headlights at it. And it flashed lights back at me.
Yes!
And then we sat there and stared at each other for 10 minutes, and then it flew away.
Oh, yeah, it definitely sounds like something.
Yeah, that's, sure. If that was Piedmont Airlines, they wouldn't be anybody's subsidiary.
Yeah.
So that, to me, is obviously garbage.
Start drink service immediately after we hover over the highway for 5 minutes, flashing our lights at people.
A state highway patrol officer the same night saw again the V-shaped craft, red lights down one side, green lights down the other, two searchlights, chased it around the back roads.
I mean, I would.
Right?
Why not?
Yeah, if I were out driving around in the middle of the night in Robeson County and I saw a UFO, I would absolutely chase it around.
Right. Be using that little light on the side of the car, little spotlight. Like, hey!
So they both said this can't be a 737 because it doesn't look like one, it doesn't act like one, and a 737 makes noise.
A lot of noise.
Kind of a lot.
Yeah.
The same Sunday newspaper article reported sightings in Robeson County had been ongoing since the first night, and the researchers for now a different name, the National Center for UFO Research, which again I think is them getting New Fork's name wrong, had flown into Lumberton and begun interviewing witnesses.
Nice.
So people are like on the scene.
I seen it.
And finally, on Monday, April 7th, the Robesonian reported that an officer with campus police for what was then called Pembroke State and is now UNC Pembroke was off duty, just traveling with his family a couple of miles north of Pembroke, and that he saw 5 circular objects traveling in formation land in one of his fields because he also had a farm that he operated.
Color went a lot further back then.
And he reported that they lowered out of sight behind the horizon. His wife was like, let's not go back to the house. And he was like, no, we got to go back to the house right now. He turned up his driveway in time to see them fly away. So he said, I don't know if they actually landed, but in a newly tilled field, he found blue-gray ash residue in big circles.
I like that.
At which point, the Sheriff's Department for Robeson County came out and collected samples and took photographs of everything. And the Robesonian ran photographs in the newspaper of all of this having happened.
That's awesome.
So after that, sightings simply stopped.
Okay.
That made me think, well, what was it? As noted, the FAA said the sightings were of a Delta-shaped 737 being flown by Piedmont Airlines, but there are some obvious problems with that. For one thing, Piedmont Airlines didn't actually buy any 737s until 4 years later.
Ooh.
I did my research.
Good detective work, Batman.
Well, thank you. The 737 was not Delta-shaped. It looks like a regular old jet plane that you get on at the airport.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is. And I can tell you that it would definitely not be silent, as we have discussed. And Piedmont Airlines never said, oh, yeah, that was us. And in fact, the Robesonian contacted the FAA and said, who was that spokesperson that issued that statement? And the FAA said, we don't know what you're talking about.
Some other three-letter agency.
Yeah. Now, that said, there was an experimental aircraft being developed at the time, and that was the B-1A bomber, a.k.a. the Rockwell Lancer. It was developed in the late 60s and early 70s in response to conflicting directives from the Defense Department, who wanted to replace the B-52.
The government couldn't agree on something?
Right. The Nixon administration was a mess. What? So they wanted something that would be an upgrade to the B-52. They wanted something that could go really fast and fairly quietly. Yes.
Very quietly.
And thank you. Thank you for doing Futurama Nixon. They wanted something that could go real fast and fairly quietly at super low altitudes in order to avoid Soviet radar.
low and fast and slow, all the things. That's a contradiction, sir. Whatever.
Yes.
Oh.
And what they needed it to be able to do was to be able to take off from very short runways. Mm-hmm. They designed it to have what was called variable sweep wings. It had one configuration that looks like a regular plane, and one configuration where the wings fold back and it forms a triangle. And I think that's so neat. So that sounds like a really good explanation because it was like actively in development at the time.
They had like
Except the paper mentioned that it was an unusually stormy night that night.
It was a dark and stormy night.
And I do like the idea that if I were going to go test my faster than the speed of sound jet, I would pick a night when it's stormy so that people don't notice the sonic booms.
Also, that would explain why it stayed really low, right? Because visibility matters if you're in an experimental aircraft.
Yeah. I am so ignorant of airplanes that it is kind of a miracle that I actually did any research. So I'm going to take that at face value and say yes. But there is a problem with that idea also of being the B-1A.
The hovering.
The hovering, for one thing, the silent for another. And the first recorded test flight of the B-1A was in 1974, but it was 6 months later in California.
All right.
So it is awfully tempting to write this off as a test plane.
I was going with test plane the entire time you were talking.
Yeah.
Just because of the lights and everything.
But none of the police officers who were actually standing there 100 feet under it as it went over reported hearing sonic booms. And you hear continuous sonic booms when a plane going that fast goes over you.
Right.
Eventually, those investigators that I mentioned, there were multiple teams, but at least one of them was sent by J. Allen Hynek himself.
Okay.
Who was super famous in UFO scientific research circles. And that team produced a report called the Lumberton Report that is 56 pages long.
Oh, I love it. There's the Lumberton papers.
And you can't find a PDF of that online.
Really?
But you can find a copy
In the state library?
in the North Carolina collection at UNC Chapel Hill. So I have put in my researcher request to see if I can go look at it. And
It
we'll
was
see.
nice knowing you. It has been great being your friend and doing this show. And when you get abducted by aliens for radio, I'm doing air quotes.
Yeah. I haven't seen it yet, so I don't really know what it says. Other than the Robesonian came back a few weeks later and reported that those researchers were telling the Robesonian, we think that there was real legit stuff happening.
Yeah.
For all I know, the report just says, yeah, legit stuff happened. Maybe we'll figure it out one day. And then that's that. Nobody ever wrote the sequel.
I love this. And thank you for doing a UFO one.
Hey, no problem. In the meantime, what is fascinating about this to me? The quality and consistency of the observations. The fact that the observers were trained to be able to estimate things like distances and speeds. There were so many of them that even if some of them were bad at it, it's a lot of people. The fact they all had plenty to lose if they drew the wrong sort of public scrutiny, you know?
Yeah.
These are small town cops in the 70s in the rural South.
Right.
There's a lot of competing social pressures involved.
And sheriffs are elected positions.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. The fact that no authorities in Fayetteville said that they saw a thing is really interesting to me.
So
That's
telling.
like somebody has cut letters out of the magazine, you know, and you're like reading the article, and then you're like, wait a second, where did that one go? Plus, it's an exciting set of reports. And supposedly, all of this was, in fact, the inspiration for the first third of Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
There you go. Brought it all home.
There we go.
That's what we call a callback.
Yes. And just because I think it's neat, then I printed out copies of the Robesonian articles and all kinds of fun stuff.
And I will not hoard them. We'll put them up here with the swag so you can look at them too.
Do you have any questions or additional comments? Because I want to know that when we do an episode where I do really deep research, it almost always turns into a two-parter because I talk for 4 hours. And I clocked that one in at 45 minutes.
No, you killed it. You gave it the Charlie treatment on that one.
Thank you. I have earned
your second
my
pour.
Fletcher bourbon.
Can I have some more?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Yeah, so my initial take was because of the green and red lights and because of the spotlights that it would be an experimental craft of some kind.
Yeah, that's kind of what I
Now,
figured.
to me, it might just be an experimental. Okay, full disclosure. I've been reading the A.J. Hartley, Tom DeLonge books for the last month. Oh, my head is in that space.
Yeah.
And the general plot of those books is that the United States government has machines that they have built through
Reverse engineering?
Thank you. I kept saying retro, but no. Reverse engineering. By reverse engineering, found alien technology.
Sure.
And you can debate, what is an alien? But basically, non-human intelligence created technology.
This is in the book. This is fiction.
The book. Yes.
Okay.
It's fiction.
I just realized that it was fiction, and I had just been like, yeah, obviously. You know.
But that's the whole thing about the marketing in these books. The whole marketing for these books is that it's based on the truth, but it's fiction.
Sure.
Because a whole bunch of former CIA people were involved with the company that published it. And you don't become former CIA.
No.
You don't just walk away from the Central Intelligence
I feel like they don't have a
Agency.
retirement plan there.
So,
Well, they do. It's just not what you think.
right. So former CIA payroll people were advisors on these. Advisors.
Yeah.
And
Big air quotes.
on these books, rather. It's plural. There's two. And these craft are basically experimental aircraft, and they're still trying to figure out how to work them and push the envelope and do all this stuff. And they can do the things that you're talking about, like stand, hover, move really quickly with no sonic booms and all that stuff. So it just really makes me think of that. And so first I'm like, experimental aircraft. And of course, it's the Tom DeLonge book, Experimental Aircraft. This might be technology that we don't understand yet.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
And every time you said flying V, I thought of the old guitar shape flying V.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's really funny. Let's just, what if I were the Air Force and it's the 60s or the 70s and I've got downed alien technology and I have figured out which one is the gas pedal, then yeah, I would take it to an Air Force base that's in the middle of nowhere and I'd fly it around a bunch of little towns and I'd see what people saw. I'd mash every button.
There's a guy in the book that does that and gets in trouble.
Oh, okay.
And they're like, what are you doing? And he's like, I just wanted to see what it could do.
This is one of several reasons why I never had a military career.
But I see, devil's advocate, I hear you, but I disagree that old Vietnam would be the place to start that. There's way too much traffic there.
There's a lot of people in Fayetteville.
Yeah.
Like it's a much more populated place than people think.
Yeah.
Fort Liberty has traditionally been one of the most densely populated military installations since its creation.
Right. So I don't know that that would be where the experimental aircraft would be tested.
I mean, like today, according to what I read about it, there are 29,000 people at that fort.
It's huge.
That's bigger than most towns in North Carolina. And it's just the fort, part of town.
Yeah. So I, again, don't work there, but I work in Fayetteville. And when there's an 18-year-old that blew his enlistment bonus on a car that goes too fast and he wrecked it, and then you got traffic stops and you have to go around the base, it takes forever. You wind up on these back roads out into the middle of nowhere and driving. It's terrible. So yeah, there's a ton of people in a very condensed space.
And none of those are ever disc-shaped or V-shaped craft that have been crashed into something.
No, it's always a Mustang and or a really big truck. Jump the median and hit a stop sign, and it's always some young-looking kid standing there going. And it's just like, dude, stop texting and driving.
For real.
The thing I wonder is that why? I mean, there's at least you got Rachel and places like in Nevada and stuff. There's no. Why did you just go like North Alaska?
Because of the Russians.
Yeah. Too
They
easy
can
to
see you. From their backyard.
Right, that's what I hear. They're just all standing there. It's like Home Improvement over there.
Yeah, they're just all
staring
looking over the fence at each other.
No, but for real, I think that's probably a pretty good reason.
Yeah,
you want some place that's kind of in the middle of the country.
Yeah. Well, now we have balloons everywhere, so.
Yeah, right.
Balloons.
We don't have time to get into balloons.
Can I tell you my favorite balloon thing really quick?
Go for it.
So somebody made a morale patch.
I'm all done with my notes.
And after the balloon incident off the coast of South Carolina, and it was an Air Force morale patch, and it had a fighter jet shooting a missile through a balloon, and it said, float around and find out. And it made me so happy to see that, and I was just like,
That is absolutely delightful. Feel free if you would like more.
I'm good, thank you.
So, are there any questions on this or any other topic?
What happened to the ash? They like this that's kind of the only evidence.
Oh, so it got collected. The Robeson County Sheriff's Department collected it. Also, some of the New Fork researchers that produced that Lumberton report were working with the Robeson County Sheriff's Department at that point, and supposedly they got some of it. And they said, well, we're going to send it off and see what it is. And then there's never really any mention of it. My hope is that gets talked about in the report. Yeah.
The Men in Black come to your door. Just make sure, like, you get like one of those.
I'll be like, take me.
No,
Where
yeah.
are we going? Does this mean we're in?
Yeah. If they showed up at my door, my only request would be just keep blinking that memory thing until it's all gone.
Right.
Just liberate me from knowledge. Just let all of it go. And let me start anew as a child. And just let it happen. Oh my God.
Can you imagine?
I'm doing that. Just one, huh?
Imagine if it was selective. You were like, I want you to take, and they'd be like, sir, that's not how this works. Stop. It's
Okay,
like,
so-
all right, so.
So I need you to take out this one guy and this
Oh, I
other
said
guy.
this one really stupid thing once that I lay
this,
awake at
like,
2 o'clock in the
yeah.
morning thinking about.
This
Can you
one-
take that out?
The one really dumb thing I said that time, and that other time, and that other time. Yeah. Y'all,
All right then, everybody. Thank you.
it's 7:57. Thanks.
7:50.
Thanks for listening.
Heidi ho. All righty. We'll stop recording. You've been listening to Arcane Carolinas. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. For more episodes, behind the scenes information, and links to our social media, check out www.arcanecarolinas.com, where you can also buy the Arcane Carolinas book.
And if you like award-winning horror and science fiction, check out my books at michaelgwilliamsbooks.com or visit my publisher, Falstaff Books, at falstaffbooks.com. And if you have story suggestions, comments, or questions, email us at arcanecarolinas@gmail.com. And thanks for listening. That's going to get edited out.
There's quite a few things on this one that are going to get edited out. Let's see.
You do. I'm just going to say, when you showed up to the live events, I'm leaving this part in. When you show up to live events, you get to hear a lot of stuff.